Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. The teaching of the 12 apostles. I don't mean the Gospels. I don't mean the epistles. I'm talking about the Didache. It's a written document that reflects what was believed to be the oral teachings of the 12 apostles before the documentary evidence began that led to the canonized Bible. In the last video, we looked at chapters 1 and 2 and talked about how editors date this document. Chapter 3 begins, "My son, flee from evil and all that is like unto it." So here we have a command not just to flee from evil, but a call to trust the subjective voice, our gut, when it comes to doing something that may or may not be against our faith as Christians. This is very interesting because it warns us not only about evil, but the perception of it. And it says, "Be not inclined to anger, for anger leadeth to murder." Whoa, what a jump that is. We wouldn't even hear of that in our society. Today, there's a new age system based on naturalism that wants to take sin, which is chronic, progressive, and fatal, part of the Judeo-Christian worldview, and replace it with the naturalistic, morally relativistic worldview that says all these things are based on some type of mental disorder. But here, this isn't mincing words. It jumps straight from anger, something we talk about every day and say, well, we have to work on our anger. We have to be more patient. But here it tells us flat out that anger leads to murder. We'll see a couple sentences on that anger is synonymous with passion in that way. "Neither be a zealot, nor quarrelsome, nor passionate." It's very interesting. In our society, we value passion for things, but this is telling us that the road of evenness, not being too much in one direction or the other, not too high in the clouds happy and not down in the dumps depressed. Building a strong routine in our life day to day might be boring, might not be exciting, but it keeps us from the path of evil according to this very simple and succinct teaching. It says that all these things lead to murder. From anger comes murder, and if you're a zealot or quarrelsome or passionate. "My son, be not lustful, for lust leadeth unto fornication." This is a reality that for some reason our society today has the most trouble admitting to. Adultery is super common, and at most times it leads to pain and divorce. But in the case of the Colorado husband Christopher Watts, he killed his pregnant wife and 2 daughters after beginning an affair based on lust and physical attraction with another woman. And the police and psychologists were baffled by this man's actions. This is more extreme than they see in most cases. He eventually confesses, fails a polygraph. But we couldn't say, hey, be careful, because look what can happen. Lust leads to fornication. Fornication can lead to these awful things, anger, passion, which can lead to murder. We won't admit that to ourselves. They've actually developed a new form of narcissism for people like Chris Watts. When I say they, I mean those in the psychological world. For example, the DSM-5 came out in 2012, 2013, and since then we've developed more names for more mental things based on people's crazy actions as a result of sin. It's quite a fascinating dichotomy that our society has. "My son, practice not augury." Augury. Well, today an augur is a machine that digs in the ground. What is augury? Well, it was something practiced by the Romans during the time of the early Christians. It was people who would study birds and their movements to essentially prophesy both natural and allegedly supernatural things occurring. So they would watch the birds and see how they fly, where they land, where they sit, and use that to determine what was going to happen in the future. Well, here it tells us not to do that. And it reminds me that Jesus gives a parable about the birds several times. Even in the more obscure Gospels like Thomas, he is alleged to have picked up clay off the ground and molded a bird. But he teaches us in Matthew that, look, God provides for the birds and they don't store up unto themselves. Well, wouldn't he care more about you as a human than this bird? That's the point he essentially makes. Quite fascinating. "Nor be a user of charms, nor an astrologer, nor a user of purifications, neither desire to look upon them, for all these things cometh idolatry." Well, what I found interesting, a while back I made 2 videos about the Code of Hammurabi, which predates the Hebrew Bible by several thousand years. I thought it was really fascinating that right out of the gate Hammurabi talks about these things: charms, astrologers, purifications, sorcery. It reminds me of something that we often forget: naturalism. The idea that all things can be explained through natural scientific occurrences has permeated our society from the middle of the 19th century through the present. But that's not the only view. There is another philosophical view called supernaturalism. Well, supernaturalism says we all stem from a creator. It essentially adopts the moral structure of the Judeo-Christian worldview. Why don't we understand supernaturalism as well as we do naturalism? Well, first of all, it's not taught alongside naturalism. It's not even referenced. But when we talk about things like Christian miracles or supernatural occurrences, the reason why they're supernatural is because we don't have a means through which to analyze them or study them. So they are outside the realm of our frameworks of understanding. That, by definition, is what makes them supernatural. And it allows for more than naturalism does by its very nature. I tend to argue worldviews through these 2 lenses instead of unknowingly being trapped in the lens of naturalism. My son, be not a liar, inasmuch as lying leadeth unto theft. Neither a money lover, nor vainglorious. From all these things come thefts. Well, we go back to it saying, don't be passionate. Don't have ideas and things that are too lofty, right? We want that even middle road, right? The way that leads to life is straight down the middle, and it has all these paths that take us up and take us down. We have to be careful. Think of something like zealot, right? We use that term to mean somebody that's overly religious to the point of extremism. Well, that pathway probably looks pretty good, but it takes us into the area of passion, which we're cautioned about. Just like we're cautioned about down into death, anger leading to murder. It really is advocating a very calm, center-of-the-road approach, which is quite interesting. My son, be not a murmurer, inasmuch as it leadeth unto blasphemy. Well, this is quite easy to see in our society. We live in a very idolatrous society that murmurs a lot. What do I mean? Well, remember, idolatry, quite frankly, is anything that is placed ahead of God. It can be team sports. It can be a car hobby. It can be clothes. It can be gossip when we talk about murmuring. I mean, most magazines and posts on Twitter and Facebook are nothing but the Hollywood rags about this actor or that person or this politician, and it's designed to pique that human nature in us toward loving gossip and watching others fall and things of this nature. I love how the Didache cautions us. I mean, it's such a high-minded form of theology, It's interesting because it encapsulates so much more in such simpler words than even some of the great texts of old. But the meek, be meek, for meek shall inherit the earth. Here we get our connection to the Sermon on the Mount from the Beatitudes of Jesus, right? We can look at chapter 5 of Matthew, chapter 7. Meek is beginning in spiritual poverty, brokenness, born of water, born of spirit. That is the road to meekness. The road to meekness doesn't go off to passion, which can be good. It doesn't go off to too lofty ideas, which can be good in a capitalistic society. It doesn't go to the way of anger, lust, that can lead to death, murder. It's even, right? That's what it's telling us. Be long-suffering and merciful and guileless and peaceable and good and always in fear of the words which thou hast heard. Not in fear that you won't come to it, but fear that you tremble before it because you know what it is based on the gospel, the words of God. Thou shalt not exalt thyself, neither shalt thou give arrogance to thy soul. Thy soul shall not be joined with the lofty, but with the just and lowly shalt thou converse. This is telling us something. Is this telling us that the lofty aren't just? That the lowly are just? This is a fascinating subject that deserves its own treatment. The idea that the lofty, the ambitious, there is no justice in the ambitious. That is a very interesting topic, because you could say, hey, I'm ambitious and I believe in justice, but there must be things along the way. This deep understanding of the human condition, sinfulness, is just refreshing. Thy operations of God that befall thee shalt you accept as good, knowing that without God nothing cometh to pass. This is very similar to the concept in Romans 5, right? Once we come into the fold through the gospel, through Jesus Christ, and we are forgiven of God, God is at times going to allow tough things to happen. But it says to view the operations of God that befall us as good, because we know that without them, nothing comes to pass. The will of God happens. I know you've thought of this too, but you're in the line at the store. You share a kind word with the person in front of you. It improves their mood. They share a kind word with a person in the parking lot. The person in the parking lot goes on to share a kind word with somebody who's at the end of their rope. That's the very simple idea behind synergy, right? Reaping what you sow. Spreading a seed. Very, very deep concept there. Well, we're hitting the 12-minute mark, and we've gotten through chapter 3 there. I think I'll probably separate this with chapter 4 being a different video, just so we're not going too long. I want to update you on a few things, too, that I'm very happy about. EvangelistNickGarrett.com is up and running. We have the shell of it in place, the basic elements of our mission and our vision. And as we go forward, we're going to add to the website elements of evangelism. So look for that. Check out the new website. At our Teespring store, where we sell merchandise, Truth First Christianity merchandise, we have some new products available. And I've begun the final editing process of the 4th book in the Just Tell Me the Truth About Christianity series. Just Tell Me the Truth About the Reformation and Counter-Reformation. Neither one of those can be told without the other. I firmly believe that, and I hope to encapsulate in this 250-page book the very simple ideas that give us the foundation upon which we interact with our Christian faith today. Thank you so much for your time. If you would like to support us, we do use PayPal, Cash App, Venmo, whatever is convenient for you. Small amounts, 1, 2, 5, whatever you can do is helpful, and it does help us to be able to devote more time to more in-depth research on these types of things. So I thank you for your time. I'm glad to be with you. God bless you, and may your work today bear fruit.